This is going to be a presentation over the end of Chapter 10, Section 1. We're going to be talking about the early republic for ancient Rome. The last time we talked, we discussed how the Etruscans were kings of Rome, the last three kings of Rome specifically, and how they were very cruel. And the noblemen of Rome, they actually overthrew the last king, and the noblemen, they wanted to set up their own government. And then that's where we're talking now. The government that these noblemen are going to set up is known as a republic. And we're in roughly 509 BC. Now, a republic, make sure you know for your vocabulary term, is just simply a type of government where people elect leaders to govern them. It is not a democracy. Okay? There are democratic principles like majority rule and voting and things like that. But in a republic, you have a small group of people that are voted on to become the leaders, and then they will govern the city, they'll make laws, they'll execute the laws, things like that. So Romans elected officials to rule their city, and the officials had many powers, but they only stayed in power for 1 year. So you didn't want to make too many mistakes or else you won't be reelected. Plus, the reason why they chose only 1 year of service is that they did not want any politician to become too powerful. Keep that in mind. That's a reason why they limited them to 1 year terms. Just like here in the United States, in the beginning of our republic, because we're trying to make sure we compare and contrast the Roman government to the U.S. government, is we built a republic in 1787, and one of the big beliefs at that time was to make sure we build a government that one person could not become too powerful. Now, today, of course, our presidency probably has way too much power that if our founding fathers came back and saw how much power our president had, they'd be really disappointed. Okay, but Rome was not a democracy. It was controlled by a small minority of men. They were very powerful and wealthy, and really those that had no power or wealth really had no say in how the government was run. It was still really a small group of people. Now, early on in the Roman Republic time, there were many challenges. There were challenges from the outside, and then the next category we're going to look at is challenges from the inside. And very quickly in this new government, the Romans realized, wow, we've set up a government here that may be a little bit too slow to react to emergencies. So in this case, they had set up a government, which we'll look at in section 2, where they had their two leaders. They had two leaders for the city. They were called consuls, kind of like our president today. But these two leaders, they didn't have to agree on everything. And if they didn't agree, nothing happened. The Romans realized real quickly, we need at least one person in charge to make a decision in times of emergency. So that's where they came up with this idea in their government to choose dictators. Now, it would be the Roman Senate, the powerful. They would choose a dictator that would serve the city of Rome for about 6 months. And these were only in times of emergency. So if you're being attacked from outside invaders, things like that. Like I said, they have absolute power, though. Once you're named a dictator for that 6 months, you have absolute power to do whatever you need to do to make sure that Rome continues. Now, one of the most famous dictators is going to be this guy here named Cincinnatus. Okay, he's down here in this biography also, which I want you to read. In around 458 BC, the Romans are under threat of attack from some outside invaders, and they call on Cincinnatus to help them defeat this outside invaders. Now, Cincinnatus is a farmer by trade. Okay, he's not even a politician, anything like that, but he is so respected by the leaders of Rome that they call on him to be a dictator for about 6 months. Now, what happens is very quickly, Cincinnatus is able to defeat the enemy, put down the rebellion, that type of stuff there. But what's most amazing is what he does after he defeats the enemy. Okay, he still has about 5 months where he can be dictator, have all the power of the Roman Empire and everything like that. And he gives it up. He says, I don't need this, I don't want this, and he goes back to his farm. Okay, and that becomes an inspiration for others of Rome, and then, of course, the United States. So I want you to read this part right here. This is actually going to compare Cincinnatus to George Washington here in the United States. Okay, so that's just one example, but make sure you understand Cincinnatus and his importance and why the Romans considered him to be the model of ideal leadership. All right, make sure you pay attention to this map here. You can see all the different outside groups that would love to take over the Romans once the Etruscans were kicked out. You have the Carthaginians, you've got the Greeks. The Etruscans, of course, are up here still going to try to take over Rome. All right, now, not only were there challenges from outside of Rome, like outside invaders, there were problems inside Rome too. Okay? Inside Rome, you had basically two different classes of people. You have the plebeians, okay? These are the commoners, the common people, the lower class, and then you have the patricians, or the upper class, the noblemen. Okay? Now, under this here, only patricians could be elected to office, so they had all the political power. It's the patricians that make the laws. And of course, they're not going to make laws that hurt them. These laws that they make usually are going to be keeping the plebeians in their lower class status. The problem for the patricians is that there's a lot more plebeians than there are patricians. So they have to toe a fine line here to make sure that the plebeians don't rise up and try to overthrow the patricians. Now, it's also the plebeians that do most of the work around Rome. So if anything was to be done around Rome, it's going to be plebeians that are doing it. Very quickly into this new republic, the plebeians realize, hey, we do have power. We may not have political power, but we have power over these patricians. We can refuse to do the work. And that's what some of them will do. They will refuse to work on their craft, their trade, trading, things like that. Another thing that the plebeians are going to do that absolutely scares the patricians is that the plebeians will form their own council, their own government. They will elect their own officials here in Rome. And this frightens many of the patricians, and they're going to fear that within 15, 20 years, this city is going to fall apart. And it's when you have this fracture between the citizens, that's what allows outsiders to come in much more easily and attack and take over Rome. So within about 15, 20 years, the patricians realize we need to make some kinds of changes in the government, especially to give the plebeians some say in the government so they don't fight back. Okay, so make sure you know this table right here, how the patricians and the plebeians are different. But do know, I mean, early on in the city's history, there were challenges outside and inside, just like the United States. Just because we won our American Revolution over Britain did not mean things were very easy for our country. Okay, the first government of the United States was an absolute failure. The Articles of Confederation. Luckily, it only took about 7 years before the founding fathers realized this is a mess and we are going to be slaughtered if we keep this Articles of Confederation. And they will come together in 1787 and develop the Constitution of the United States. And it's that Constitution that a lot of its principles are taken from the Roman Republic's time period. So we were very lucky in our early history to have founding fathers that actually saw this situation and were willing to make changes, just like the Romans are going to be willing to make changes, which we will take a look at in Section 2. Okay, make sure you finish up that green sheet. You have some questions there at the end. It's under that homework folder or homework portion. Make sure you fill those things out there according to our little talk from today. All right, thank you.